Well, hi everyone. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Andy, and I will be your host today. Ashok, Joe, thank you so much for joining me on stage. And let's get right to it. So somebody once told me that AI doesn't need to be big or complex to be impactful. What it needs is purpose. So before we get into the technology, I would like to discuss what is the business driver behind it all. So starting with Ashok, in your case, an industry that is heavy on human relationships, like a talent agency, how did AI move beyond an IT project to a business imperative?
Yeah, it's a UT, as you know, we kind of we're a business that lives and dies on two things. One is the human relationships, and then the other is the power of a great idea. Joining those two things, you see magic happen with respect to, like, an athlete that is taken to the next level, or a movie that's produced, or opportunities that come down people's way. For us, AI isn't some, as you said, IT project. It is actually a strategic kind of imperative, because without it, given the volume of opportunities that come our way, volume of business that we could potentially support our clients with, the tedious, the manual nature that, is our business, it does just not scale, right? And with, the variety of platforms that are out there with a consumption point of view, those opportunities are going to continue to grow. And unless we're equipped to kind of scale with that, it's going to be a challenge. Right? So for us, we've kind of, we represent thousands of people, as you know, 52 verticals. We're building, we have to use this to kind of scale, like I said, and mainly precision at scale. Scaling without precision is useless, right? We're also looking at velocity, right? So how quickly can I, map opportunities to talent in the most efficient way? Because a lot of these opportunities are like first come, first serve, right? Yeah. And then the last area for us is shifting from, hey, being reactive to more being proactive, where I can look at things coming in and proactively kind of, recommending people for certain things, or approaching things in a different way. So
Got it. Scale definitely changes the equation. Joe, in the case of Arc, and an industry as fast paced as global publishing, what is the promise behind AI? What does AI mean for Arc?
So I think we began thinking about our mission statement at ARC, which is a belief in the power of storytelling to change the world. And we saw AI as a real opportunity to enhance storytelling, enhance the ability for those stories to reach new audiences, and to do it at a faster pace that really allowed our teams at the Washington Post, our parent company, as well as the thousands of newsrooms that use our products today for their digital experiences, to tell better stories. So we kind of went through three different phases as we began that journey a couple of years ago. The first was enabling journalists and storytellers to work more efficiently and take the tasks they hated to do, things like metadata enrichment, optimizing titles, and allow them to spend their time instead on the craft of the story itself. So we saw about a 20% gain with our first efforts in just the efficiency of telling a story. We've gone from there to enabling more advanced workflows with agentic storytelling that allows really a co-creator experience between agents and journalists to once again serve that mission. The final part, and probably most exciting element, is we've used AI for new consumer experiences, so those great stories can reach a new audience where they are. And what we've seen is the audience wants a different form of storytelling and interaction. They want to be able to interact with the story, ask it questions. And so we have something called Ask the News, which is also an agentic platform that spanned from that storytelling ethos all the way to engaging audiences so our customers can derive value.
By the way, I've tried Ask the Post. I think that it's a fantastic experience how readers can interact with the news and not just consume the news. All right. So now that we've established the strategy, let's start shaping it a little bit. Let's move on to the what. Joe, you called out agents in your answer. There's a lot of momentum around AI automation and agentic workflows. So starting with you, Joe, I know that Arc has been working on some agents embedding them inside the CMS, like the copy editing agent. Could you share a little bit what are some of the features and functionalities that the agent provides and the productivity boost that you expect to see as a result?
Absolutely. So we began with more of a spot solution for that tagging scenario that wasn't agentic. With the help of Wizeline, we built a whole agentic workflow around taking the style guide from an individual newsroom and applying all the elements of that style guide in real time as a journalist works on their copy editing. And so that does everything from the basics of the tone to fact checking to making sure sources are properly authored, and then also making sure that all these different attributes of what are pretty thick style guides come together properly. And that was frankly a really hard challenge because it wasn't just one agent; it was dozens of agents simultaneously working, simultaneously coming back with different answers, sometimes conflicting answers, on what it thought was how you could improve the story to match the brand standards of our customers. And frankly, that's what traditionally humans, copy editors have done. They've used their own intuition to balance competing interests where it's not just binary one way or the other. It's not just spell checking. It's much more nuanced. And so that's where an agentic workflow really came together to dramatically increase the efficiency of that end-to-end step. So if we were close to a 20% increase when it was with the one step alone of doing the tag enrichment, we saw about a double of that increase in terms of the velocity of a story when people are using our agentic copy editor within the tool.
It's very interesting what you said because I mentioned the copy editing agent, but yes, underneath the hood, it's not just one agent. It is a multi-agent system or a crew of agents or a swarm of agents as LangChain is now advertising it. Ashok, when it comes to UTA, I know that you're building some deep data interconnection and complex automation throughout the entire agency. Can you share a little bit about the work that the team is doing?
Yeah, I think when we first started, I think we're starting to move beyond like a single bot that just performs one task to more, I want to say, because of our data that's scattered across like email, PDFs, legacy systems, third-party systems, we have to move towards, and that data is scattered from legal contracts to social media data to performance to finance data. It's like a plethora of data that we have to interact with. So we've kind of shifted our focus to what we were calling kind of multi-agent kind of workflows, where essentially we're building kind of a specialized team of digital experts or archetypes where, they act almost as a force multiplier for our human agents, right? Literally. And, what that looks like in the real world, just to give you a couple examples, like, contracts are like a central source of where business starts and where business ends for us, right? So we have like a contract intelligence pipeline or workflow where, we're deploying agents that don't just read a document and extract stuff, but also reason, right? With respect to, hey, am I missing something here based on prior trends? Am I missing a clause here? Could this be a better like negotiation tactic back? So that's another big thing. The other thing that we're investing in and looking at with you guys is, the almost, I want to say like a logistical conductor where we're looking at, how can an agent or multi-agents be working together to kind of simulate what humans would do, like to a large extent in a very like long, tedious manner on, let's say I'm booking or trying to optimize a tour for like a musician that's on my roster. If things change, like a venue no longer exists or like, there's a disruption with their travel schedule. How can I like automatically kind of like look at that, recommend something else, right? Mm-hmm. I think so, the goal I think isn't to find like a single magic AI button. It's really, I think, building like a connective tissue of connected agents, specializing certain functions, and then joining together to kind of hit kind of a different level of output, right? That humans on their own could not do.
That single button metaphor works really well for us because that's where we began, literally with buttons in our interface to do certain AI actions. And we've removed those. So now the agent's just watching and chips in and co-creates. So we share the same view that multi-agent coordination really unlocks a much broader set of value for our customers than those single point buttons where the industry kind of began a couple of years ago.
Yep. All right. So this is where it gets real. We're moving into the how. it's always good advice to build on solid grounds, but that can be somewhat challenging in the age of AI, where you have a new model, a new product, a new tool coming out every other day. Haven't checked my phone yet today. Not to mention the underlying complexity of testing, evaluating, and monitoring agents, which by definition are autonomous and non-deterministic, right? It almost feels like building on quicksand. So starting with you, Ashok, can you tell us a little bit, what are some of the core building blocks that are allowing you to deploy agents in a way that are reliable, scalable, and secure on AWS?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think honestly, it's one that we probably address and look at every day, because stuff changes so quickly. But holistically, our kind of tech stack is built on, maybe I want to say, a few kind of non-negotiable pillars. One would be on, to your point, models change every day. We want to make sure that we're building stuff on a model agnostic kind of backbone, right? For us, that means we built our system to be more model agnostic, where we want to be able to swap the brain out of the system without completely like blowing up the system, right? To a large extent. So, that's one big thing. The other thing, as you know, like, as with everything, honestly, without a good data foundation, none of this stuff actually makes a difference, because your agent can act on like horrible information and it's going to perform in the worst possible way. So, it is important that our AI is grounded on high quality data, UTA proprietary data that allows the agent to know the nuances of kind of operating in a talent agency and the space that we're in, versus just general approaches which don't work that well, right? And then the couple other things, I think, like the Amazon partnership in particular with like Bedrock and Agent Core, it's allowed us to move kind of very quickly, very safely, and we've kind of been able to kind of do things early on, right? With them, and as they've grown as well, we've kind of grown with them. We've enabled all this in, like, I think, a very rapid kind of timeline, which I don't think would have been possible without the use of things like Bedrock and Agent Core and some of those things, right? The last thing I want to say is, like, trust. The trust layer is very important, right? Because we're representing talent, and I'm sure you have the same thing, it's important to kind of manage identity and access, especially when we're allowing our agents to act on behalf of someone. Like in the ecosystem, it's important to have traceability, auditability, and kind of being able to go back and kind of audit actions and being able to root cause certain things if they go wrong, right? I think that's about it. I think from my perspective, I think the last thing I'll say is, every tool that we use out there is adding an AI feature. So whether it's Slack, whether it's Box, everyone has an AI feature that they're turning on. And turning those on blindly, you're going to I think it's going to lead to more chaos than good, right? Because each one of them has its own view of the world. Each one of them doesn't know the context of whether it's operating. So I think it's important. Like, I look at it as almost a conductor-musician type of analogy. If you don't have the conductor, that is the fabric that we're building, musician can't really operate in the ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
So.
And there's one thing that you said, which I think it's a known secret, but maybe not known enough. There is no AI without data. It all starts with the data, right? Joe, at the scale at which Arc operates, how are you able to deploy agents that can handle volume and velocity, but at the same time, never, ever compromise the quality and reliability of the output? Because at the end of the day, that is the brand, the reputation.
Yeah, I mean, that quality is paramount for us and our customers to ensure, as a story is being told, a hallucination doesn't make its way into that story or to a consumer. So, we definitely consider the concerns in the build process in terms of the architecture, leveraging Bedrock in a similar way to have the ability to port or use different models underneath and allow our customers to choose it. So it kind of began in the design phase of making sure that resiliency was built from day one. And we considered observability of those agents just like we do for the rest of the platform. We're fortunate to be cloud native on top of AWS. We run tons of infrastructure, so you can imagine we have many dashboards and observability systems. And we didn't wait till the end of the build out to consider those for AI. Up front, we decided we selected how we're going to do observability. We built in hallucination monitoring. We had teams looking at that day by day for Ask the Post at the Washington Post side. And we also, in the product design, took a slightly different approach with agents. If we use consumer AI products today, they will both make you feel like the smartest person in the room and always have an answer. And then you might correct it and they'll say, oh, you're right. I was wrong. We can't have that luxury in media. We can't give a wrong answer. So we're much more likely to say we don't know the answer to a question and be more conservative with the outputs that we select from these models, from the agents. And that's one way the product design reinforces that quality bar that you mentioned being so high. Mm-hmm. But in terms of scale, it's important. We're running thousands of sites. We have the consumer experience side, which is much higher scale than the rate at which journalists are creating content. But there's still many newsrooms around the world constantly doing stories. You got breaking news events, you have major sports events. Those need to be able to scale so that those models perform quickly at the speed the story needs to be told. So early on, some of these models, including the copy editor work we did together, I remember we were looking at like a minute or two just to get a response. And that would be completely unacceptable to an editor trying to get breaking news out, whether that's on linear television or on a digital channel. So we really had to tune down the speed with which those agents could respond and help in the workflow while keeping the quality high. And I think observability was the one key for us. The product design from the start, considering the quality and observability, and then finally leveraging the capabilities of Bedrock and AWS to scale that platform with demand, even when there's giant spikes in consumer activity or the newsroom itself.
Love it. Love it. Speed of the news.
Well, I mean, that's why I love, NAB and these shows. News moves fast. It's a vibrant ecosystem. And to try to move fast with high accuracy, that's one of the reasons we work so hard as an industry to do great storytelling.
Yeah. Right. So we also see, there's a lot of interest, and pretty much every company out there is pursuing the promise of AI. But having said that, we do see that there's a lot of companies out there that are stuck in pilot purgatory. These are companies that have not been able to move from cool demos to business value. As companies that have escaped or avoided pilot purgatory altogether, going from demo to pilot to production and then scale, what is the number one advice that you can give some of the leaders that might be stuck in AI experimentation? And maybe, Ashok, we can start with you.
Yeah, looking at the space, like at the beginning, it was all about like proof of concept, demoing things really quickly, and then, oh, wow, but then you realize like when trying to implement something, it's actually not easy because you haven't incorporated kind of the workflow, right? So I always kind of like, for us, it's like scaling AI is 20% about the code, but 80% more about the workflow, right? Because that has to integrate with whatever the workflow you're at, or disrupt it, or like augment it, or change things, right? To actually be useful. So rule of thumb wise, I think you want to solve for the friction, not the spark, right? So don't try to like automate things from the get-go, right? Without knowing what the, workflow is holistically. For example, like you don't want to start with like trying to automate what the gut feel of an agent is with respect to like their negotiations that, you just can't do it, right? But can you automate like kind of the friction associated with kind of the tedious, mind-numbing tasks that they have to do preparing for a meeting, right? Those types of things. Start with tangible kind of friction points, because then I think you'll get value, right, in places where AI can add some deterministic output and value, right, in those workflows. The other areas I think is really, without a data story in mind, going back to that, I hate harping on the same point, but it's important because if you don't have AI that's agent ready, right? Sorry, if you don't have data that's agent ready, then if your data is locked in silos and things that AI can't access to make the right decision or make the right recommendation, it's not going to add value, right? So data interconnection and being able to have that visible with the right permissions, right? Because that's also an important thing, because we do not want to make a permission problem worse with exposure and kind of like the ramifications that can come because of that. So ensuring that kind of like that those permissions are respected through the ecosystem is very important, right? And I think the last thing is kind of, human-centric kind of relationship with AI and whatever we do is important because usually when we say scale, that triggers kind of a fear with respect to reduction, right? Or something that's going away. We kind of flip that. We look at, hey, how can these systems or workflows that we built honestly be used to augment and kind of like 10x your productivity, right? Not like I'm going to like make this role redundant or whatever that could be, right? So it's not, like I said, it's those things. And honestly, the last thing I'll say is like building utilities, not demos, is like the biggest advice that I can give, because start with that, work backwards, and kind of like, I think problems will kind of sort itself out, right?
Thank you. Thank you, Ashok. Joe, some advice for our colleagues in the room?
Yeah, I mean, I think at ARC, we always start with the customer value and how they're going to adopt what we create and the tools we give them. And over this journey, actually, our first customer to push us to build AI agents and tooling ended up in pilot purgatory. And it's because they skipped the step with their leadership team in their newsroom to prepare them culturally to accept the tool. So we built amazing things with that customer, and we brought that tool set to our customer base, and our other customers actually leapfrogged them because they were still stuck skipping the step of the human side of deploying this new value. And so I think from a leadership perspective, there are a lot of fears out there about AI still to this day. Perhaps they're increasing in some areas, decreasing in others. Within this industry, 2 or 3 years ago, it felt really to peak where newsrooms were very threatened by even a copy editor agent doing the tasks they don't like to do, those friction points. We've seen across our customer base that's eroded a bit, and now people are much more comfortable using these tools. But as we embark on even more bold uses of agents and storytelling, I think that fear will come back. And if leaders skip the step of having a clear vision of the value of those tools, of making sure their teams know they're not just being replaced by AI, you have to do those steps. And so I think that's our takeaway is it's really not a technical challenge that leaves you in purgatory. It's skipping the leadership, the change management that results in that arena, so to speak.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll say is, there's a lot of opportunities to go wrong with a pilot. Like if you start with the Sparkle or the demo, you're trying to do something cool. Maybe you're going beyond what the technology can do reliably. It only takes a couple of bad data points to ruin that first introduction with your team. And we've seen that ourselves within the Washington Post with our customers, where if we didn't really do the quality testing right before we deployed it at scale, even a great product might get rejected by the users, which is for us the worst outcome, because then we don't get the value to our customers. We don't get the value in the storytelling. So it's a combination of that leadership, making sure the quality level is high. And when there is a mistake, facing up to that and improving the system and being open to the feedback from your users.
It sounds like there's a lot more to AI than just AI, right?
No, one other thing that I wanted to add is like, I think it's also important, like from a priority perspective, to chase the right things, because like to your point, there's a lot of problems out there, like being able to weed through that noise and kind of focus on the things that are going to move the needle and have something that you can showcase that's trustworthy and then scale off of that, I think is also a great thing to kind of follow. Right. So.
I'm gonna jump in here. Prioritizing is key, focusing on the things that matter. We see many companies that spend too much time working on things that are honestly distractions, just pursuing small incremental productivity gains and not focusing on their core business. And we also see some companies that, they fall into money pits, right? Things that are maybe a little bit too more complex than what they're able to deal with right now. So it's really important to identify those quick wins, build momentum, and then move on to those bigger bets, right?
You got to watch it after it goes live, to your earlier question.
Yeah.
Some of those early pilots we did ended up being very expensive to run at scale. And we had to go back and re-architect them, change the models. Oftentimes we all choose the most fanciest, newest model out there. It might be completely unnecessary for the job at hand. So
yeah,
that's also something we've seen.
Yeah. And we're here at the AWS Theater, and, AWS is all about that day one. But when it comes to agents, I feel that it's also super critical to think about day two, which is operating the agents and understanding that when you deploy, that's not the finish line. That's the starting line. All right. So last question, and I'll keep it short because it is a little bit self-serving. At Wizeline, we pride ourselves on being builders, and we love solving problems and building innovative solutions with you both. I'd like to ask you, what do you enjoy the most of working with Wizeline, and what do you think we bring to the table? Maybe Ashok, starting with you.
Sure. I think, Andy, in our world, like, I think being the agency we're at, our like noise, our I hate to use the term, our BS detector is pretty high. So, I think it's important, like we've seen kind of the consultants come in, give us a 100-page deck and leave us with a PDF and go their merry way. And then, like, I think it doesn't work, right? The reason I think this partnership works is because we share a lot of like common, I think, DNA. Like in particular, like when UTA hires, we look at kind of three things: being humble, being hungry, and being smart. Right? Those are kind of the three signals, right, that we use on the tech team. And I think if you look at it, like especially in a space that's moving this fast, I will find it very hard pressed to find someone that knows exactly what the hell is going on at every minute and every second of the day, because I don't, right? You don't. Like everything changes so quickly. The architecture that we developed, like with AWS, like, I mean, and you guys, like at the beginning, we flipped probably what, 3 times in 6 months, right? To get where we were going from a production perspective, because that's how quickly things change. So being able to be hungry and humble and kind of see those things and kind of adapt, right, are very critical traits. And that's why it works, right? We're not operating on like a static piece of paper with fixed milestones and deliverables that can't change. This won't work in this day and age, right? I think the last thing is, I mean, smart. And I think I'm not just talking about IQ, I'm talking about EQ, right? Where your team is integrated with our team. And it's kind of like, I don't see a difference largely because I can go talk to any one of your guys can talk to any one of our guys. It's like a very kind of seamless kind of partnership, right, from that perspective. And same thing with the AWS folks as well, right, being a trusted partner. So in a world, I think, where tech changes every Tuesday or every day, adaptability is truly I think, the true competitive advantage that we can have. So, that to me is why this partnership works.
Thank you for sharing. Joe?
We've partnered with Wizeline across many years in many different ways, whether it's helping our customers adopt Arc, helping us build features within our platform with great engineers, or most recently, the copy editor agent work. And I think the common thread between all those has been direct and honest communication. So I know if something's going well, you'll hear that from us. And if it's not, we'll also have a quick conversation and you'll respond to that very quickly with the team's expertise. I would say in the most recent work we did together, we took advantage of your new pod model to develop this, which was a new way of working together. And that way actually leveraged a lot more skills from Wizeline than we ever have before, because we didn't just engage you as a development partner to handle a couple of Jira tickets. Instead, we started with that business problem. We co-designed, co-built, co-iterated that week after week. And it really was a great experience. Not saying it was great every day. I know we had some tough conversations across that, but that was necessary. To see that come back, that partnership is something that we expect from our tech partners and our customers expect from us. We believe in partnership at the core of ArcXP. So, for us, true partnership begins with that honest conversation, a shared ambition for the future, and a willingness to go beyond kind of the core requirement. I recall being at NAB, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, inspired by some of the work you were showing at the AWS booth. And having a partner that not only helps us build things, but inspires us for the future, that's partnership in my mind.
Thank you. Thank you for Joe for sharing. So with that, we've come to the conclusion of our session. I want to thank you both for joining me on stage, and I want to thank our audience for their time and attention. All right. Thank you all very much. Pleasure.
Thank you.